in. So, in the grand Hollywood tradition, he basically got the movie made by lying through his teeth. We'll find out if that's true. I'm going to introduce Richard Tuggle right now, and we'll sit down for a few minutes and talk. So let's start at the beginning. How did you hear about this escape? How did you end up writing this movie? How did you research it?
Well, it's an amazing story. And I wanted to come here tonight to tell you the craziness, the insanity, and the excitement of getting your first movie made. I was living in San Francisco in the mid-1970s. And I was young, sort of ruthless, bouncing around from job to job. I got a job with a tourist magazine. And I said, what do you want me to do? And they said, we want you to go to porno shops and strip clubs and get them to advertise our magazine. So I did. That's a whole other story. Alcatraz was sitting out in San Francisco Bay the whole time I was there, but I'd never gone. People in San Francisco basically don't pay much attention to Alcatraz because they see it every day, they're accustomed to it. It's like people in LA think of the beach or the ocean, it's just there, you don't really care about it. But one day this friend of mine said, let's go out and take the tour of Alcatraz. And I said, well, I don't know, I'm not that interested, but he convinced me to go. So we go until we take the boat out there. Now, today, Alcatraz, there's 1.5 million people who go there to see the prison. So it's like Disneyland. But when I went, it was small. It was like a ranger guide and maybe 7 or 8 people he would take around. Now it's all automated with tapes and blah, blah, blah. So we're walking down the cell block, and we stop in front of these cells. And he said in 1962, basically, these guys tunneled out of the back of the cell, left dummy heads with hair on it to fool the guards, got in the utility corridor, climbed to the top, where they made raincoats into rafts, drilled through the roof, got over these wire fences, got into the bay, paddled away in the fog, and were never seen again. And so then the ranger guy said, okay, let's keep moving. And I was standing in front of the cell. I didn't move. I just thought, that's the greatest story I've ever heard in my entire life. I said, that ought to be a movie. But I had zero connection to movies, and so I didn't know what to do about it. So about 2 years go by, and I'd forgotten sort of pretty much about it. And I'm editing a sort of a hospital magazine that went out to hospitals in the West, and I get fired. And so I'm thinking, now what am I going to do with my life? So I thought back to that escape, and I just said, I just couldn't forget it. So I lived in North Beach. I went down to Fisherman's Wharf, and I just sort of looked out at Alcatraz thinking, what can I do to get this as a movie? And I looked over, and there were some like tourist stands where they were selling junk, and a lot of picture books on Alcatraz. But there was a book called Escape from Alcatraz, and I bought it, and I took it home and read it. It was really more about the history of Alcatraz and all of the escape attempts. There's like a lot of failed escape attempts. But there was about 3 or 4 chapters that were really interesting and on this escape that I was interested in. So it said the author lived in Berkeley. So I drove over to Berkeley and I said, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'd like to get the rights to your book. And if I sell it, I'll give you some of the money. And he said, great. He said, there's one problem. The publishing company had retained some of the rights, film rights, so you have to deal with them about this. And I thought, oh boy, I'm young, I didn't have a lawyer, I didn't know anything. So I called them numerous times, 5, 6 times. They don't return my calls, they transfer me from person to person. So I was thinking, this is not going to work. But finally I get someone on the phone and she says, look, we've decided to send the rights back to the author and you just deal directly with him. And I was kind of suspicious. I said, well, why would you do that? And she said, to tell you the truth, the book is 12 years old, it's out of print, and the chance of you selling a screenplay on this subject and making it into a movie is so slim, it's not worth our time to deal with it. So that confidence builder, I said, okay, I gotta start writing. So I'd never seen a film script. So I went to the bookstores to buy a book on how to write films. But believe it or not, there weren't books about that. Now you go to bookstores and they're everywhere, but there weren't. So finally some friend of mine said, there's some theatrical book place that handles plays and all that stuff. And so I went down there and I found one book on screenwriting. Not one book and 20 copies. I mean, one book and one copy. So I read that book, and I kind of got an idea about the format. And so I started writing, but I realized I just didn't have enough material from the book. The author, John Bruce, who was a great guy, that had enough in the book. So I found out that the Bureau of Prisons, I'd never heard of the Bureau of Prisons, but they were in south of San Francisco. So I drove down there, and they showed me a lot of interesting stuff. The history of the prison, the way they ran the inmates, blah, 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 blah. And then the guy said, the FBI is not far from here, and they actually have information on this case too. And I said, really? So I went over to the FBI, met some PR guy, and he said, yeah, we'll show you the files. And they had like the dummy heads, they had the tools that they dug with, and all this stuff, and it was just a treasure trove of information. So I go back and I'm writing the script, and then as I kind of getting close to finishing, I looked at it and I said, well, I'm not sure that they actually did this on this day, blah, blah, blah. I better go back to the FBI and check. So I drive back down there, and there's a new PR guy. And I say, hi, I'm Richard Tuggle. I'm writing this thing. I'm come back to have you let me see the files to check on this. And he said, what? And I said, yeah, I need to check on the files. He said, not only can you not look at these files, you weren't supposed to look at them months ago, and you're not allowed it here. This is an open case of escapees, and we're still looking for them. So I felt like saying, well, it's been 12 years, good luck. I didn't. So then I finally sort of finished what I hoped was a script, and I made like 3 copies, because I didn't know what to do. So I drive down to Beverly Hills with my surfboard, and I live in my friend's apartment, and living room. And so now I'm trying to figure out, now what do I do? So I had one contact, a woman who was in casting at Paramount, and I say, I have the script book, is there anything you can do with it? And she said, well, I can try to give it to the story department. I said, great, I'm thinking, I got this hot script, I'm just gonna go right to the story department I'm in, like Flynn. So then about 2 weeks later, she calls me up and she says, they read your script. I said, oh, and she said, they hated it. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, they have these boxes like story, character, location, all that stuff. And they put like mediocre and poor almost on every one. And the log line was, this movie is a 1930s melodrama of limited interest to